Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
And we have a special guest this week, Bob Perry, who's the Director of Business Development for NBC Universal-owned television station group. And applause.
Hi, Kevin. Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me today.
Guests, so this is an honored spot. I know you feel that way. The reason I wanted to have this conversation is Tom and I were talking after a conversation that I had with my wife, and we were talking about the dueling town halls between Joe Biden and Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago, and how when the debate got canceled, ABC scheduled a town hall with Biden, and then NBC scheduled a town hall with Trump. And there was some tumult within NBC about that, but put that aside for a second. There was a lot of debate. It's like, how are they serving the American public by putting these things against each other? And I looked at my wife and I said, yeah, I don't know what the big deal is. Everybody just recorded on their DVR if they want to watch it. And my wife, who's much wiser than I am, looked at me and said, well, how many people in America have DVRs? I said, oh God, it's got to be, 80, 90%. If you got cable, you got a DVR. She goes, I don't know if that's true. So I went and checked. And in fact, it is not true. It is a significantly lower percentage of that. And I think what that tells us is there's even more, other than the fact that it tells you that I'm a privileged Connecticut guy who thinks everybody in the world has a DVR. It also, I think, tells us that there's a lot more fragmentation out there than even maybe people think. I assume that is completely true considering all the different elements of your business.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, think about everything that we've gone through in the last 6 months, and how many habits have changed from shopping online and grocery, up hundreds of percent at major retailers, and Amazon 10.6 billion, in Prime Day. But think about like your shelter at home. I had 4 adults from March through May living in my home, and everyone was using different screens, to kind of look at the content that they wanted to. Like my wife and I would watch the morning show on Apple TV, but my daughter was watching something on Hulu, and my other son. And with limited televisions in the house, they were reverting to laptop and tablet and phone. So I think the ability to view content in any environment on any screen has become a lot more normal, like a lot of the other habits that have changed during this shelter at home and COVID.
And it appears, just looking at the numbers, that that's even accelerated, obviously, because of COVID. I mean, there were the numbers are just extraordinary in terms of how many different ways there are to access information, which I guess then it raises the question, how does a marketer reach out to people, because there's so many different avenues to take?
So, I mean, that lends itself more to the, what digital has kind of built that foundation on from a programmatic standpoint and targeting. That has kind of lent itself now to that OTT and connected TV. And at NBC, our product that we own is Spot On, and we brought that to market 6 months ago, and that enables to specifically target down on the connected TV, not only from a linear standpoint, but like a data-driven linear, but also from a digital standpoint. It is a kind of an overlap of the two experiences. But the targetability on the Spot On and the connected TV on the NBC side, that is a product that we can target through audience segmentation. We can build audience groups, and we can target up to 210 DMAs across the country specifically, and individually, and in any grouping. So it's really, when you look at that audience and then kind of push out that way, you're going to find that audience based on whatever, caveats that you put against that audience. So I think that as fragmented as this environment has gotten, there are ways to currently, kind of key in on the specific demo, whether it be programming or, specific habits or purchasing habits, things like that. Those are the ways that we're kind of narrowing down. But at the same time, you need to be careful, because when you put so many of those caveats on an audience, the scale isn't there, and you're marketing to 7 people across the country, and you're not going to have that return on ad spend and that return on investment that you want to from a targeting standpoint. So it's kind of an even keel that you need to keep when you're looking at scale and size of the prize and audience, and then how specific you want to get from a target that's going to gain results.
Bob, I want to ask you, so it's actually quite intriguing to think that I can, because historically, right, we had mediums that were kind of blanket mediums, right? You had mass media TV, you had relatively mass media print, although I guess you kind of knew which, where that circulation was going and generally which type of audience you were reaching at the end of it. When we think about, this fragmented media across these devices, is the data pretty good on who's at the other end of that service?
We're finding it pretty good. I mean, the pilots that we've run with Spot On, as well as very targeted digital campaigns for specific brands driving to specific retailers, has really been great. I mean, we're going through these case studies now and looking at the attribution and the halo effects at some of these campaigns, and we're really seeing positive results. And is that a combination of just targeting the audience? I think it's that, plus the time that people are spending on screens, right? And exposing themselves and engaging with these, and feeling more comfortable with that e-commerce purchase, or that shoppable television purchase, or the universal cart that NBC has rolled out from a network standpoint. I think that all of these products, and as we have talked, some of these next level e-commerce or t-commerce, however you want to call it, it's time to dangle new techniques, new things in front of them, and educate these audience, these consumers that are like, you're not going to believe this, I just bought my groceries online, it's the first time I've ever done it. Well, oh wow, you want to save more money? Let's look at replenishment, let's look at structured meal plans, let's look at like all of those things from a retailer and brand standpoint coming together. So that's a long-winded.
It kind of resonated for me in a parallel universe. I heard, it was in this universe, but in a parallel or a different segment, I heard Herm Edwards, the old gristly coach, coached the New York Jets back 20 years ago, right? And a couple of years ago, he was taking over the head coaching role at Arizona State. And there was a lot of questions with him coming in, like, how's this old guy going to come in and resonate with these young kids? And he said, I realized as soon as I got there that traditional ways of teaching these kids, they're not going to work. Like, these kids grew up looking at a screen, and they spend so much of their day engaged with their device and looking at their screen. I realized we needed to coach through that. So, we needed to coach physically with them, and we needed to physically motivate them, when we're present with them. But the availability of these screens actually makes it, we can be more effective because we can be with them more and have a more intimate connection with them. And I think if you think about fragmenting media and commerce, it's very similar.
Yeah, and along that same line, Tom, as an example, look what Microsoft Tablet did with NFL, with the Super Bowl and women in athletics, and I mean, it went so far beyond just an ad campaign. It really kind of let the consumer, take a look behind the curtain and say, this is how we're working with today's premier athletes that are winning Super Bowls with technology and data. And you look at all of the fodder that is spewed during these games, and it's really just sheets of data points that the guys have prepped for their plan, and it's all Chris Collinsworth and his company out of Cincinnati providing all of this data for these announcers to kind of like just kind of fill dead time, especially when some of these games are so one-sided.
Totally.
This season. But from a technology standpoint, you make a good point, right? With screens and adapting. I don't know if you had the opportunity to go to the Apple, tune into the iPhone event, the iPhone 12 event, and what they're doing to that technology. And, they are kind of pushing that out to be more of a gamer tool. There is this LiDAR technology that they've installed or built into the iPhone 12 now. It's basically, giving you better experiences from a gaming standpoint. It's 5G, so it's faster. But also some of the software on there, like the ability to run CAD drawings on your iPhone.
Crazy.
It's unprecedented. It's really unbelievable. And now you're going to look at some of these companies like a Snapchat, I think, is the first one to embrace that LiDAR technology to, let consumers play with it via the iPhone 12. And I think that, others will follow suit from an Android standpoint and some of these other smartphones, but also the technology. So I think that the screens and the networks and the products are getting bigger, faster, stronger. It's a whole Steve Austin, 60 man scenario going on here. And, you look at Apple as a company, and it took them a decade, right, to reach $1 trillion in market cap. And in the last 5 months with the split, they're at a $2 trillion market cap in 5 months. It's unbelievable what's happening in the short time frame, and the evolution that is really going on.
It really does show you that you used to be able to win in retail by having, great stores, great location, great products, great services. Now you have to have great digital engagement with your customers.
Well, it's almost like there's I'm not sure if it's a metaphor or a simile or what it is, but right, it used to be that there would be networks, and then there would be movie companies, and then there would be a digital company, and then there'd be theme park companies. And now, NBC has all of that, ABC has all of that and more. And if you don't have all of that functionality built in, because you're simply not going to be able to compete at the same level as the people who do. And the same thing goes for retailers, right? If you don't, if you're thinking to yourself that you have to, I'm sorry, my phone just went off. That was unprofessional of me.
Cutting room floor.
I hate that happens. But if you don't have all that kind of different kinds of functionality as a retailer, you're simply not going to be able to compete with those who do. However much you kid yourself, no, I'm going to be pure. Well, purity is great, but it only gets you so far.
You bring up a good point that, when you front NBC and then, also ABC align with that. But as we were discussing, Disney as the parent company and Disney Plus with, Dan Loeb as the, activist investor saying, let's take that $3 billion and not pay a dividend, but, kind of pivot and go to a distribution as opposed to a different siloed vertical network that you just described. It really is just kind of blowing up. And, the saying content is king is going to have a whole new rule. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can, as a Disney Plus, as just like NBC and Peacock, you will have exclusive content. You have franchises that you can offer these exclusive screenings and viewings to that consumer, and it will help you with your downloads. And Disney in a year is at 60+ million downloads. Disney Plus in a year, where Netflix in 12 years is at 200 million. So Peacock has just eclipsed 20 million from a download standpoint. On variable, you can get it free. You can pay a little bit and get some ads. You can pay a little bit more and get no ads. I think that this is really where the focus is going, and how you're gonna kind of glue in on those eyeballs. Peacock originally it did launch in July, but it was supposed to align with the NBC Summer Olympics 2020, and with that being pushed, we are now, Peacock will have a year ramp before the Olympics come out. But the plan on our side was to put Olympic content on that Peacock app that you were not going to be able to get necessarily on the NBC or the Telemundo or any of the other networks that we have carrying any sports. So I thought that was a great strategy, and we'll kind of have to wait and see what happens for summer 2021 next July.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's sort of, these are the growing pains that the movie studios are having, right? In some way, or the theater companies, right? And they're not really growing pains because they've both been around forever, but they're not able to accept to varying degrees, sort of the new reality of where the customer is and how to cater to the customer. And I wonder, and this is a phrase we use a lot, we talk about Amazon, as opposed to other retailers, being able to think in terms of lifetime customer value. So they see the broader picture as opposed to seeing it per transaction. And I wonder if that's exactly what's happening in your business, right? You suddenly have to start to think about everything the customer consumes in terms of media, digital, or games, or whatever it happens to be, and think of it holistically as opposed to, oh no, we've got to get an XYZ share for must-see TV on Thursday night, right? You just can't think that way anymore.
I think it all has to be about long-term value these days. For the short-term revenue that you'll get for a release of, Fast and Furious or 10 or 9 or like we were discussing the James Bond movie, there's not a app that can take that content right now. But I think that, as you look short term for, we're going to release this in a movie, we're going to make anywhere from 100 million to $500 million, depending on the franchise, depending on the following, whatever. Or long-term value, let's release this to the 60 million people we have on our app, or the 20 million people we have on our app, and as an exclusive, and show them that we respect you, we love you, you're a fan of ours, and we're going to take care of you, right? So it's that white glove, red carpet treatment that as a member, if you will, of a Disney Plus or a Peacock or a Netflix or Amazon Prime, you are getting a reward for that. And I think, NBC with Peacock, but let's not forget, like, Fandango is also part of that movie theater, and Universal and all of the smaller independent studios that we have under that umbrella. One of the things that I read, I found very interesting, and I think it's very smart, that all of the studios across MGM, Universal, Disney, all of them are buying book deals through COVID. They're buying contents that they can turn into content from a film standpoint, because they're going to need that to retain that.
I have a friend of mine who's an agent who represents authors to movie studios and TV studios. He's having a very, very good year.
I bet.
It's working out. So as we wrap up, give me an example, though. Give us an example of how does this connect for a retailer? How does a retailer connect into what you do that allows them to better, and a case study? Give us an example of how a retailer would work with you to connect better to the consumer.
It's new, right?
Yeah,
it's new. And Bob and I have worked
ideally.
on a few of these.
Okay, maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's next year.
We can't name anyone, but you think of the idea of, you create these media moments that are, for lack of a better term, shoppable, right? You create a media moment where you connect a consumer, that magical moment where you connect a consumer with a product, to be able to take that moment and convert it into commerce. It can be pretty magical. We've got shoppers that don't quite expect that yet. We've got brands that don't quite know how to execute that yet. And we have retailers that don't quite know how to handle and convert that demand yet. But I think overall, we're pretty bullish on what it could ultimately mean. Wouldn't you say, Bob?
I agree. I think that some of the components that are built out around that omni shopper approach, that omni approach, that, the shoppable television, the QR code is born again, from, you can scan it on the big screen on your television. NBC's Universal Cart is, working with editorial and display to drive more sales, and becoming more of a partner in that retail experience, whether it be a direct-to-consumer experience for wellness and health products from a Thrive Market, or if it's a specific synthetic motor oil that Amazon is running a special for from a brand standpoint. You know what I mean? So it can run the gambit, but NBC is really that Swiss Army knife that we can help in any scenario, right? So spot on and digital is going to is going to ring the bell for that direct to consumer and drive to that product landing page within a retailer environment or an own site, but also to use the platform and use the the linear and the integrations and some of the Telemundo is multicultural audiences right now are it's the majority, and the number of advertisers that and brands that are not embracing that, and again, it's an education or it's an afterthought, but that multicultural audience is key to success and growth across all entities, right? Whether it be a direct-to-consumer or a retail or a brand product. And I think that we talked about the fragmentation, but I also think that Omni Shopper can kind of engulf that. And you're going to see different degrees of success, whether it be the return on ad spend across an OTT connected TV digital play in specific markets to a specific audience, to a buckshot, okay, let's run network and, across this and all my affiliates and all of this. And let's see how we do. It's efficient, it's scale, but is it going to ring the bell? It's going to deliver the same results that a targeted, very specific infrared campaign would generate for that same retailer or brand.
So last question. Kroger just announced this app that they have where you're going to be able to use your phone and you can take a picture of 3 items in your cupboard or your refrigerator, and via AI, they will give you a recipe for those 3 items, using those 3 items. Is that, when I read that, it sort of struck me as the precursor to the idea of being able to be watching a show, looking at something they're making on screen and saying, oh, I want to make that, pushing a button and instantly ordering those things up. Are we talking about the same continuum there in some ways?
I think so. It's an additional tool for the Kroger shopper to use. I love this. As soon as all the restaurants in the New York City and New Jersey area started closing down, I heard about chefs that were kind of out of work, but they were offering services to consumers saying, hey, take a picture of your cupboard and your freezer, and I will give you recipes for $20 or $30 and walk you through how you can make a nutritious, healthy meal for that. So for Kroger to embrace that in a 4 or 5 month time period, that's something that, recipes and retailers, and it's kind of like, yes, it makes so much sense, but do we have time for it? Well, guess what? Now we have time for it. Consumers are spending more time curating their cart and what they're buying, and they're cooking more at home. They're experimenting with recipes. They're enjoying family time, and they're looking to, impress their friends and family at outings where, under 10 or under 15, depending on where you live. And this is a crock pot recipe that I made from Kroger's, 3 items that I took a picture of. So I think there's a social element to it. There's a pleasing and a family element to it. But I also think it's another step, as we were talking about, in educating the consumer on new digital tools that are going to save you time, save you money, and make you happy and healthy and keep you together as a family at the dinner table.
Well, I love it that you're trying to impress people. I'm trying to just get people to stop complaining about the food. So, well, listen, Bob, this is Bob Perry. This has been fabulous. Thank you so much for doing it. As this technology continues to roll forward, I hope we can have you back and talk about new stuff that you're doing. For now,
pleasure.
This is the Innovation Conversation. I'm Kevin Coupe.
And Tom Furphy.
And we'll see you next time, everybody.